Chapter 2. A man's purpose is his work. You are not a unique and beautiful snowflake. When you are living your purpose. When you are living your purpose, you get up early in the morning without an alarm. You stay up late, focused, without getting tired. You never tire from your purpose or get bored with it. Your purpose is an obsession. You forget to eat, forget to drink water, forget everything else. Fear doesn't stop you. Weakness doesn't tempt you, and you become relentless. People who are not living their purpose say, slow down, take a break, have a little fun, take a vacation. They don't understand that your purpose makes you happy, and that to you, every day is Saturday. Time is no matter, and it never matters what day it is. Screw the TGIF clock-punching mentality. You are seizing everything you ever wanted in life. You only get one shot in this life. Don't waste it living someone else's dream. Live your purpose. There is no other way. Stephen Arnio. The way a man penetrates the world should be the same way he penetrates his woman, not merely for personal gain or pleasure, but to magnify love, openness, and depth. In his best-selling book, Fight Club, which became a hit movie in the 90s, Chuck Palahniuk is credited with being one of the first to use the word snowflake to describe the modern man. You are not special. You're not a beautiful and unique snowflake. You're the same decaying organic matter as everything else. We're all part of the same compost heap. We're all singing, all dancing crap of the world. America became successful by being a bastion of freedom and a beacon of hope around the world. The freedom, hope, and, most importantly, philosophical and religious freedom that made America great are now getting choked out by claims of racist, sexist, homophobic, or whatever other labels the popular narrative is using. In the old days, if your father was a blacksmith and you wanted to be a cobbler, a shoemaker, you lived with the cobbler and learned your trade. Your father, the blacksmith, took on another boy who wished to be a blacksmith. The men raised the boys and taught them how to be honorable, strong men. There was no TV or MTV, iPads raising babies, or state-run schools. Men raised the boys into men, and women raised the girls into women who the men would want to marry and have families with. The men were desirable. The women were desirable and were not the type that men would want to opt out of for a lifestyle of video games and pornography or a foreign wife from a more traditional society, such as Eastern Europe or Asia. A boy learned to be a man from other men, and he learned what a man's purpose was, his work. A man's main purpose in life is to work, whatever that work may be. To paraphrase the great Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius, do the work of men, and do the work that only you can do. As bees make honey, so you must do your work. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome at the height of its power. He was a great emperor, a warrior, a philosopher, and a strong man. He understood that men had to do their work, and in his collection of memoirs, Meditations, his words ring throughout history as an example of exemplary leadership. His book is highly regarded in the military, in business, and by leadership around the world today, where strength is still valued. The bees are a great example. The bees do not stop. They do not think about, should I make honey or not? The bees do not go to Europe to take a year off and find themselves. They don't need a guidance counselor at their high school to help them select a career they would be happy with. Bees don't follow the follow your dreams horseshit advice that we give to young people today. Instead, the bees just work, every day and every night. The bees work around the clock to make honey and serve their purpose, which is their work. The bees do the work that only they can do, and thus men must do the work that only they can do, the work in front of their face, the work that the group needs done, the work in front of them that validates their purpose, builds trust with the tribe, and makes them capable of serving their purpose, being a man, Will a man always love his work? Hell no. Work is work. It is not play. Play is grounded in feminine energy and is reserved for women, children, girls, and little boys. Play is not reserved for men. In fact, when the ship is sinking, women and children get the lifeboats, not the men. Nobody promised that work was going to be fun. Work is not dreaming. It is not becoming a rock star, movie star, or pro athlete. Those are mostly vain fantasies that teenage boys have and are not based in reality. Sure, there are a few rock stars kicking around, a handful of movie stars who have grinded it out, and some pro athletes who have put in the work. But there is nothing but work and grinding in this life. And the day you stop filling your purpose with work as a man is the day you become useless, retired, and ready to be tossed from the ship of society into an early grave. Retirement has never really existed throughout history and cultures. You worked until you were no longer useful or you died, whichever came first. Henry Ford. There is joy in work. Rock stars are a fantasy. I used to want to be a rock star, and today, in my industry, I am an influencer with public exposure, so I could be crudely labeled as a rock star. But a rock star is a fantasy and detached from reality. As Slash from Guns N' Roses says on being a rock star is the intersection of who you are and who you wish to become. By virtue of this definition, a man can never become a rock star because who we wish to become is always attached to a fantasy. Fantasyland is attached to Boyland and is right beside Disneyland as the happiest place on earth. This is not a place for men. It's for children, women, little girls, and little boys. Men do not hang out at Disneyland alone. If you did, they would escort you out as a potential pedophile and sex offender. Men do not belong at Disneyland or Fantasyland unless they are bringing their family along and paying the bill. Men live in reality, and reality can be mundane and suck a lot of the time. Men, real men, do not live in Fantasyland. Real men, strong men, do not live virtually in their World of Warcraft accounts where they fantasize about being a wizard and shooting Mag Eichel spells at one another. They are not drowning in video games and pornography. These are unmanly pursuits. Instead, real men wake up early in the morning, go to work, and do the work that is required. Even now, I'm writing this book straight out of bed because it's my job and I am doing my work. Real men may love their work and they may love their purpose. They also may not love their work or purpose. At the end of the day, no one cares if you love your work or not, and it doesn't really matter to the tribe, to women, or to the other men you know. Your feelings do not matter, Snowflake. Men must work to support themselves, their women, and their families. Your feelings about this don't matter, have never mattered, and never will matter. Welcome to your life as a man. All of this stupid bullshit that children have been so crippled by has grown out of something called the self-esteem movement. And I'm happy to say it has been a complete failure, because studies have repeatedly shown that having high self-esteem does not improve grades, does not improve career achievement, it does not even lower the use of alcohol. It most certainly does not reduce the incidence of violence of any sort, because as it turns out, extremely aggressive, violent people think very highly of themselves. Imagine that. Sociopaths have high self-esteem. I love when these politically correct ideas crash and burn. The self-esteem movement revolved around a single notion, the idea that every child is special. Every child is clearly not special. But let's say it's true. Let's grant this. Isn't every adult special too? And if every adult is special, then that means we're all special and the whole idea loses all its fucking meaning. My father struggled with the idea of work for years. As such, he never really had a job. With a small amount of seed money, My father and mother purchased a promotional products brokerage to sell printed t-shirts, printed mugs, and other promotional products when I was just a baby. My father was never truly successful in his business and ran it for 16 years sideways. He really wasn't in business for 16 years. Instead, he did the same year 16 times. No one in my family or friends ever really addressed the fact that my dad was perpetually sideways with his work and his business for 16 years. He called himself an entrepreneur for 16 years, but he really wasn't. He never raised capital or started a business from scratch with a product, which is what most true entrepreneurs do. He was a broker, and to be clear, brokers of anything are not entrepreneurs. They are salespeople. My dad was a salesperson, a broker of printed materials, a middleman. He sold shit, as many men do in this life. Sadly, I believe that my father used his business to live in fantasy and to hide from the fact that he was unemployable, unable to lead or follow, and incapable of listening to directions and doing the work. Essentially, all the things that real men must choose to do every day. My parents divorced when I was 17. At that time, my dad's business, which was supported by my mother and her job as a teacher, lost its financing. My mother made $80,000 a year with the teachers' union at the time as a government worker, guaranteed income. My father made $30,000 a year at his business and didn't always bring home money to pay bills. Sometimes he brought home money. Sometimes he didn't, as many undisciplined amateur businessmen do. He had unpredictable results based on unpredictable actions and a lack of discipline. My mother resented this fact. She hated his lack of manliness in his work. He did not embrace his work and instead used the fantasy of being a business owner to avoid the real work of building a business. When my dad's company closed due to lack of credit, my dad never got back up on his feet to become an entrepreneur again. He never was an entrepreneur, never worked on his skills of work, never read a book, and never took a class to improve his work and his purpose. He drove a limo for 13 years, taking minimum responsibility for his life. He took pilot lessons because it was his dream, his fantasy, and it made him happy. He put himself into over $100,000 of credit card debt. Last April, my dad called me. I was in Houston, Texas, going on a real estate cruise for rich, successful real estate investors and their hot, beautiful, Barbie doll-looking wives. My dad says in the receiver, "I owe the bank a lot of money." "How much?" I ask. "Over $100,000 on credit cards, and I can't make the interest payments. It's over 20%, replies my dad. I waited for him to say more, but he didn't. He was ashamed, and rightfully so. He thought that taking pilot lessons for years on the side would somehow provide him with economic salvation from his money problems. After the divorce, he followed the advice of go to school and get a good job. But this advice had been outdated for years. Plus, no one wants a 60-year-old rookie pilot. Getting a real job with an airline was out of the question for someone with his age and experience. I later learned that my dad was driving out of town to fly for a shitty little skydive company and got paid $100 to drive an hour out of town to show up to work and then $5 a flight. He could maybe do 2 flights an hour if he was lucky. This was less than minimum wage. "What the fuck, Dad?" I said to myself when I heard what he was making. "That's poor decision making. You are putting yourself on the poverty line? Working at McDonald's pays better than that, and you don't have to drive, fly a fucking plane, or get $100,000 of training to make minimum wage. Fuck, you have to go bankrupt," I said flatly into the phone. "It's okay though. We live in Canada. There's no debtor's prison, and this isn't Dubai, where they will throw you in jail for being a deadbeat. In fact, you're poor, and Canada loves poor people. This is an awesome town. Try to be poor in. Give the bank the shitty swampland you own. Give them your shitty old car that's broken and go bankrupt. This is the best financial move you will ever make in your life." "But I don't want to do it," my dad protested, sounding immensely ashamed. "Well, I know, it sucks. But if you could sell that shitty land and car for $100,000 right now, would you do it?" "Yes, of course." "Good. Go bankrupt then." That was effectively the end of the conversation. The bank never should have given my dad $100,000 of credit. He wasn't smart enough to use it. Data, way of the superior man. A man's capacity to receive another man's direct criticism is a measure of his capacity to receive masculine energy. If he doesn't have a good relationship to masculine energy, e.g., his father, then he will act like a woman and be hurt or defensive rather than make use of other men's criticism. My mother divorced my father over his unmanly relationship with work. My mother's mother was a stay-at-home mom who was the stereotypical 50s housewife. My mother wanted to live like her mother and stay at home and raise the babies. She wanted to live her feminine purpose and be a mom. My dad seemed like he could pull off his entrepreneur dream, so she took a gamble on him and married him. She had kids with him, and I was one of the kids. When the gamble didn't pay off, my mother was very angry at being forced into the masculine energy of working and becoming the breadwinner. She wanted a man to handle the masculine duty of work, and she could live in the feminine duty of the family and the home. After my mother announced she wanted a divorce, I moved in with Grandma, my mother's mother, the seasoned 50s housewife, to get away from all the bullshit of the divorce at home. Grandma was amazing. Grandma, the perfect 50s housewife, was a relic of a forgotten and better time. She cooked traditional homemade dinners every day and set the table with fine silverware and china every day. She packed a cooler with a sandwich du jour every day. She didn't want me to get bored with the food as the working man of the house. I painted houses in the summer and it was boring, but manly work. Grandma stocked my lunch with pickles, homemade cookies of the week, sandwich of the day, drinks, baby carrots, and dip. I couldn't believe the level of service that working men had in the 50s and 60s. Grandma had my clothes washed, folded, and starched. I had never experienced starch until living with Grandma. If I got home late from work, dinner was waiting in the oven, kept warm with a handwritten note for me, and a table set with silverware and fine china. Grandma was from the World War II generation. Men were men, and women were women. My mother wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and do what she was programmed to do as she saw her mother do. She wanted her purpose to be feminine and about the family. She needed a man who was masculine to do the work, make the money, shut the fuck up, and pay the bills, just as her dad did for her mom in the glorious days of the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. She never got a man. She got a boy in a man's body. My father. He had an aversion to work and hid behind a shitty business that wasn't really a business. It was a t-shirt brokerage. He played games with money and never stepped up to be the man. When I was 17, she said, "Fuck this." I walked in on my parents in the kitchen one day at 17 after music school and saw my 5'4" mother towering over my 6'0" father, who was on his knees crying and begging her for a second chance. She had just told him that she wanted a divorce, and he got down on his knees and begged while she towered over him, hands on hips in a Darth Vader, "Don't come near me" power pose. While my dad was begging on his knees like a dog for his life, my mother lost her composure and laughed at him. She didn't help him. She didn't give him another chance, and she betrayed him in his moment of weakness, as many women would. A woman who must support a man is forced into the masculine purpose of work. The man is forced into the feminine, and this is unmanly. Unmanly men are savagely attacked, discounted, and thrown out by women everywhere. If you can't fill your masculine role of work, your woman will divorce you and find a man who can fill the job description. Those are the rules. An unmanly man who can't work and can't support a family is of no use to a feminine woman. A feminine woman's purpose is the family, and she needs a masculine man to do the work, make the money, and be the man. My mother had enough, and as a feminine woman forced into the masculine role as the breadwinner, she metaphorically stabbed him in the back, as a woman always eventually will to a man who fails to fill her needs to be feminine. She was forced into the masculine role in the relationship and hated him every day for it. She hated his weakness, and she hated who she had to become to make it work. Fuck him, she probably thought. I sometimes feel guilty for my parents' divorce because one day I came home from working with my dad at a summer job, and I said to my mother, "Mom, I don't get it." We would secretly complain about my dad's business and bash him behind his back. This was a very unmanly thing to do on my part, but I was 16 and didn't know any better than to engage in womanly gossip with my mother. She gossiped about him, so I did too. No one had laid down the rules for how to be a man. "I don't get it, Mom. Dad goes to work at 10 and comes home at 2 san with a 1-hour lunch break. What does he do? How can he be making money?" My mother has attributed her decision to leave my father to that information that I let out of the bag. Do I feel guilty for telling her that? Yes. My mother worked full-time as a teacher, and as teachers often do, she worked into the night with special clubs, assignments, and marking exams and papers. My dad would make lunches for us like a housewife, bring home some discount groceries from the discount grocery store, and then fall asleep in front of the TV. He didn't always bring home a paycheck, and this pissed my mom off. It angered her to see such incompetence and work avoidance in a man, avoiding his purpose and his work, making lunches like a mommy, and falling asleep in front of the TV like a baby instead of getting better at what he had to do. He didn't train, didn't read, didn't study, and he didn't take a course or hire a coach or mentor to make him great at his work and purpose. Instead, he avoided the reality that he was shitty at his work, and his inability to own his problems made him a boy and not a man. She wanted a man, but she was forced to become the man, and manly she became. My mother often said, "I felt like I had 3 sons and no husband." I don't blame her for this feeling when I look back on how my father treated his work and purpose. If a man never discovers his deepest purpose, or if he permanently compromises it and uses his family as an excuse for doing so, then his core becomes weakened, and he loses depth and presence. His woman loses trust and sexual polarity with him, even though he may be putting much energy into parenting their children and doing the housework. A man should, of course, be a full participant in caring for children and the household. But if he gives up his deepest purpose to do so, ultimately, everyone suffers. Data, Way of the Superior Man. My mother, being forced into the masculine energy and masculine role of work and supporting the family, became more masculine to become the breadwinner and man of the house. The masculine energy made her skin tougher. She grew into a stocky build. She cut her hair short like a man, and she had to take on masculine qualities, such as assertiveness to do the work and make the money. She didn't get the choice to be feminine and look after the family as she wanted. If she were free to live in the feminine essence, she could have kept her skin fair, stayed slim and feminine, kept her hair long, and allowed her man to be assertive and provide the money. She didn't get any of that, so she transformed into a man. As a consequence, my father transformed into the woman. The roles reversed. Perversely, my dad sacrificed his business to make lunches, drive my brother and me to school, and take on a stay-at-home dad role. This was unsexy, unmanly, and a gender reversal that ultimately pissed my mother off. This unmanly display made my mother lose respect for my dad and reverse the gender polarity and sexual attraction towards my father. After they divorced, I learned they had not kissed in years and rarely had sex. All of these problems stem from my father never learning how to live his masculine purpose and do the work. A man must he prepared to give 100% to his purpose, fulfill his karma or dissolve it, and then let go of that specific form of living. He must be capable of not knowing what to do with his life, entering a period of unknowingness and waiting for a vision or a new form of purpose to emerge. These cycles of strong specific action, followed by periods of not knowing what the hell is going on, are natural for a man who is shedding layers of karma in his relaxation into truth. Data. Way of the superior man. Years later, when my father phoned me about not being able to pay his bills, I was 30 years old and a successful entrepreneur. My father came to me in a sideways way, looking for a job and looking for more help. I was a real entrepreneur with two multi-million-dollar companies at the time and nearly 10 employees in real estate and my consulting businesses. My dad needed a job, so he had his girlfriend's daughter help make a resume with his last job being from 1985 and a testimonial from 1985, his last boss from the last century. It was 2017 and he hadn't had a valuable job in 30 years. The top of his resume read, "Proud father of two great boys." I looked at this piece of shit resume as an owner of a business and said, "Dad, no one cares that you have two great boys. That's irrelevant to work. No one cares about your last job in 1985. That's from the last century. It's irrelevant. Go get a job at McDonald's today and start flipping burgers to get some money. Any money. It doesn't matter. Just go, or go on welfare and forget it all." My dad looked at the floor, defeated, terrified, and a little depressed. He had been running from the reality of work, and manly work, mundane work, work that needed to be done for 30 years. Miraculously, after my mother left my father, he found a woman exactly the same as my mother and started to date her. He didn't marry her, as would be a manly thing to do. Instead, he dated her and will likely date her forever, but never claim responsibility and marry her. This woman was 100% the same as my mother. She was the same age, a teacher as well. In fact, a resource teacher just like my mom. She had the same socioeconomic background, the same European background. She lived in the south part of the city, the same part of town, and had the same idioms. Taste in eclectic design of her home decor, loved the same shops, and was essentially the closest thing my dad could get to my mother, his ex-wife whom he still secretly loved. This woman's name was Val. She was cool. I liked her, and I was happy for them. Everyone needs love. Val liked that fact that my dad was fun-loving and took her in his plane and on his sailboat. A real playboy. What a show the guy could put on. But when he moved into her house and had no money to pay for things, shit got real. "Val is going to kick me out," my dad revealed to me in a moment of shame and weakness. "What the fuck, Dad?" I exclaimed. "This is the same bullshit you went through with Mom. If you don't change, you are going to be thrown out and I'll have to move you into my basement. Fuck." They say that in life, the same problems happen over and over again until you learn your lesson. My dad had not learned his lesson. He still hadn't learned to work, do manly work, work that is required, and make money to support his woman. "Get a job at McDonald's," I said. "Just get some money, get going. There's a gas station by your house. Just start pumping gas. Get going. Go." "But I don't want to do those jobs. They don't help me get to my dreams," my dad protested. "Fuck your dreams," I exclaimed to him. "Your dreams don't matter right now. What matters is that you bring some money in to show your girlfriend that you are a man and you get it done. Fuck your feelings and fuck your dreams. That's not what work is about. But I'd rather start my own business." Fuck. This guy was out to lunch so hard I started to lose it. "Dad, you haven't earned the right to have your own business. You have to have a job first and save up some capital. Then you will have earned the right to be a business owner. You aren't there right now." "Well, I was thinking of a cleaning or painting business. I could start those fairly easily." Dad, you suck at painting and you suck at cleaning. Then you have to go sell that shit and handle the fulfillment, the employees, and the money. That's way harder than you think it is. Just get a job. My dad looked at the floor. Maybe I could work for you on one of your construction crews. My dad was looking for a handout. He wanted me to hire him to paint or clean one of the several homes I was flipping at the time. I didn't take the bait. I was smarter than that. Go get a job at McDonald's or go on welfare. You have to get something, anything. You have to prove that you can do some work. My dad was caught in the fantasy of being exempt from work by being an entrepreneur. What a mental disease that is. I've been an entrepreneur for a decade, and I work 2 working days on every working day to get ahead. The reality of entrepreneurship is 10 times harder than having a job. What was apparent in that moment was that my dad was a work-avoidant boy who did not understand the most basic purpose of being a man, doing the work even if you don't like it and support your family. This basic lesson was lost on him because his father was a drunk and his family dissolved when he was 12. A boy is obsessed with fantasy and dreams, but a man understands the reality of the situation and does the work required from him in front of his face. A man builds trust with other men by doing the work and by being good at his work. A man who is not good at his work is untrusted by both men and women alike. In war, deserters are shot. These are unmanly men who run away from their work and their problems. In the corporate world, men who don't work are fired. Men who don't work have their women leave them and cheat on them behind their backs. These men are ultimately discarded by women in favor of a man who can be masculine, do his work, and allow women to be feminine. There is no place in this world for men who do not work, and your place in the world must be earned every day if you are a man. It is your purpose to do the work that only you can do. Suck it up, Snowflake. No one asked you what your dreams are. In fact, I didn't start to succeed in business until I gave up my dreams of being a rock star, gave up the fantasy, and focused on building the dreams of others. As Warren Buffett, the world's richest investor, says, "What you love about you is your hobby. What other people love about you is your business." Zig Ziglar says, "You can have anything you want in life as long as you help enough people get what they want." A man understands that it isn't about him, it never was about him, and it never will be about him. It's about his group, his tribe, his family, his wife, and his kids, never about him. Leaders eat last. The world craves leadership from men who are willing to do the work and eat last. Do the work that only you can do and be a man. Your dreams can exist, but no one cares. They don't matter to anyone else but you. Do the fucking work. If you work first, maybe you can have a shot at your dreams.